Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode of Newsflash. We are live with Glenn Bradford on the show today. We have an absolutely packed show. We'll talk about what to expect when you are expecting a big impeachment coming down the road, what it means, especially in Trump's impeachment. Mitch McConnell facing calls to recuse himself from the impeachment after saying there was no chance Trump was going to be removed. Also taking a look at the disastrous new climate summit that just wrapped up, COP25. Why white islands want a nominee that can appeal to non-white voters, and more about the 2020 election. The latest in Britain, the latest with ICE, and the possibility of voting rights under attack after a judge orders more than 200,000 voters purged from the rolls. We're also very pleased to have back with us on the show, long-time great guest to have on, as always, Glenn Bradford joining us. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us this evening. All right, so it is obviously the big story is what we're going to start with today is the impeachment. And this is, it's definitely a very, very big deal. Even as the House Judiciary Committee prepared to vote articles of impeachment, Lindsey Graham was in a back room trying to cut a last-minute deal on the subject, the New York Times describes. If the president fully admitted to what he had done, he could head off charges of high crimes and misdemeanors. Graham scribbled on a piece of paper what the president had to say. But as the president came before cameras at the White House, members of the committee suspended their meeting to watch on television. While he generally admitted wrongdoing, he did not go far enough for Graham. 9 minutes after he stopped speaking, the committee voted along party lines to impeach Bill Clinton. So that was throwback 21 years later now, almost to the day. The House Judiciary Committee this past week gathered to approve articles of impeachment against another president, again among party lines. And this whole article here in the New York Times comparing Donald Trump's impeachment process to Bill Clinton's impeachment process. And I am very, very young and inexperienced when it comes to, or just not very, haven't had a lot of political years under my belt, let's just say. So if you can kind of think back, which was obviously back in the 1990s, 1998, I think, 96, somewhere in there, like late 90s, what was that like going through that, and how do you think it compares to today's political impeachment and political turmoil that we're going through? It looks like we are, because what Glenn is, I can hear Glenn perfectly well, but it does seem like we're having a little bit of trouble here hearing him at the moment. So we're going to work on that. But it is, Glenn was in the process of getting the great answer, and I looked over, and it's like, I don't think Glenn is unfortunately picking up at all. I can hear him perfectly, but it doesn't seem to be registering on the system, unfortunately. But that is something that we will get to here. And that is, Glenn, I don't know, can you hear a little better?
Is this picking up? Can you know if it's
there we
picking?
are. Glenn, so, everyone heard if you could kind of, I hate to do this to you, but if you could kind of just like rephrase as to what you were saying before.
Sure. I was just saying before that I wasn't that politically interested in what was going on back when Clinton was impeached. In fact, for most of my adult life, I was just not that much interested in politics, which I think is true of a lot of Americans. And so I don't have a lot of memories about how the Clinton impeachment process actually worked. And in fact, I've learned more about it just from listening to media accounts today of the differences between the Clinton impeachment and the Trump impeachment. So from what I've learned, the times were a little bit different back then. It wasn't as bipartisan as in the Nixon era, but it was certainly more bipartisan than it is today. There were more Democrats who wanted to, vote on an impeachment process going forward. But then when they actually went to vote for impeachment on the floor, I don't think there were any Democratic votes. I think that's right. I'm not positive. So, but I think the thing that he was impeached on really mattered. I mean, he certainly lied to Congress, but the thing he lied about was his private sexual indiscretions, which is quite a different matter from what we have today. And so there were differences, but then I think the differences were pretty important.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like you are kind of the reverse, I think, for a lot of the way Americans are viewing in this, because the sense was, it felt like the way it was covered in the news, it was such a big drama at the time. Everybody was talking about what was going to happen with Bill Clinton and whether or not he was going to be impeached, because it seemed like there was a real chance that he would. But this week, the impeachment trial and all that's, or not the impeachment trial, but the impeachment proceedings, like, they were not very big on the news at all. They were like third, fourth stories in the nightly news, is something that I read this past week, and it's kind of slipping out of the headlines. People are getting less and less interested into it from what I've been seeing. Are you feeling the same way? And if so, why do you think that is?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the lack of drama. I mean, the Republicans are telegraphing exactly how they're going to vote, and so there isn't the suspense of the impeachment that the impeachment we had during Clinton and even Nixon. It seems like it's already pre-programmed into what's going to happen, just from the things that McConnell and Graham are saying, that they're not going to really. I don't know if they're going to take it. I don't know if taking it seriously is the right way to describe it, but it seems like they just want to get it over with as quickly as possible, and not make a total mockery of the process, but do it quickly. It doesn't sound like they're going to call any witnesses. So they'll hear the Democrats' case and then do a quick vote. So it looks like, it's already cut and dried, and the chance of him being removed from office is about 0%, and the chance that he's going to be impeached is about 100%. And I think the American public know that.
And I'm sure that probably has to contribute to a big degree as to why this is not getting nearly the same amount of attention, because there's no way, like there's just absolutely no way that there's going to be any sort of real drama about this. And what do you think then? Because I mean, I think it was kind of clear that we knew that coming in. We knew all what the evidence was, what Republicans would say, and how Republicans would most likely vote when the things came to pass. But why do you think this was something that felt like it was worth doing when the issue of impeachment first came up? And do you think it still is worth doing now that we kind of know at least what the outcome is going to be?
Yeah, I guess it's still worth doing, but less so. When they originally decided to impeach him, when the news story first broke about his transcript and everything like that, there was definite concern among Republicans on the Hill about what the president had done, and they were especially concerned about the quid pro quo aspect of it, because this financial or this military aid that Congress voted on for the Ukrainians was bipartisan, and naturally Republicans were upset that Trump seemed to be holding it up. So at that point, I remember making a kind of a mental note to myself that maybe there was about a 20% chance that he might be removed from office, just based on what congressmen on the GOP were saying. But as the process has gone on, things have changed on the Republican side. They've just dug in their heels, and many of them are saying that the president really didn't do anything wrong. He was perfectly within his rights to do what he did. And it just kind of echoes Trump's desire to not admit any wrongdoing. And it's just so discouraging that it's come to that. And, the constant complaints about the process and how unfair things are. And then there's the millions of ad dollars that are being put on, for ads for Facebook, decrying this impeachment process as a sham. The Republicans have basically, I think, hardened the split, and I think have even convinced some independents to be against impeachment. So I certainly don't think the Democrats are winning this battle, and it's very frustrating to me personally.
Yeah, it is interesting that it really does feel like they have kind of gotten steamrolled, at least in the public relations war in this thing, even though, as new polling has shown, there has been a slight uptick since November in terms of impeachment support. I saw this today. I'll say the exact numbers in a second, but I really do agree with you. I do say what you're saying. There has been a real sense of just the fact that the Democrats are kind of getting out muscled, I guess you could say. What do you think they could have done better, and what areas specifically were you watching these proceedings where you're like, that's not what they should be doing? Nancy Pelosi, Jerry Nadler, whatever the case may be.
I don't know. It's a good question. I really just want to throw up my hands and say I don't know. They could certainly retaliate in the same way that Republicans are and shout back at them. But I don't know that would work. I think Americans are really fed up with politics, and if for this to devolve into a shouting match wasn't going to help the Democrats' case. I really don't think. It's just I think most people have made up their minds right at the beginning of this impeachment process, and it pretty much falls along party lines. And I think the only hope that I had was that the Republicans in Congress would act more maturely about this and understand the threat that this president poses and would do the right thing. And that they would go on Fox News and try to convince the Republican electorate that the president really did something wrong. I mean, that's what I was hoping would happen. But they've decided to do just the opposite. It's very disappointing.
Yeah, so the numbers on that are 54% of Americans want Trump impeached, but just 50 want them removed. This is Fox News poll right here. 41. It's pretty much stayed. It was pretty much stayed steady at the idea that 50% want Trump impeached now as opposed to late October, where 49% want him. So it's pretty much around the same level. There hasn't been these impeachment proceedings. I think, as you very correctly said, they haven't made a dent. So around half the country, apparently, according to this poll, plus or minus 3 points, wants Trump impeached and removed. 4% want him impeached but not removed. I don't get why. I just, maybe you could help me on that. I just don't get what the benefit is to having him impeached, but still, because nothing happens to him there. But if he's not impeached, 41% say it's the same as late October as opposed to now, according to this new Fox News poll, which you could probably assume is a large portion of the Republican Party. They say he just shouldn't